The barn, his world's wide web. Omar was the biggest and juiciest bluebottle in the barn. For as long as he could remember, he'd been flying around this place like a king. He knew he was big because he always heard the thud when he flew into a window. Windows were complicated and nearly always took him by surprise. They were just so hard to see, so much so that he had taken to flying with one arm out in front of him, in the manner of someone walking through a forest at night. Being big had advantages and disadvantages. One advantage was that he always got first dibs on any rotting matter. A disadvantage was that he was considered quite the catch, but not in a romantic way. He was aware that he was very high on the to-do list of many of his predators. It was a matter of great pride to him that he had mapped the location of all the spider webs, and he took great pleasure in occasionally passing close enough to be able to see the look of disappointment on a ravenous spider's face. Sometimes, when he was feeling particularly self-assured, he would kick out a leg as he flew by, sending vibrations up the web. It always made him laugh when the spider ran out from its lair to find nothing more than a trembling bit of thread and a cocky blue bottle doing contemptuous loop-the-loops into the distance. Spiders were daft and lazy, he thought. And to be fair, most were. Spin a web, leave it. However, unknown to the blue bottle, a spider had recently moved in who, while being deficient in the leg department to the tune of 3, was the most cunning and experienced spider he would ever meet in his soon-to-be-shortened life. The rat and the goose. Arthur stuck his head up through the grid and looked around. "What are you looking for?" whispered Ella. "Rat mayhems." "Can you see any?" she asked. "I don't know," he answered. "I'm not exactly certain I know what they look like." "They look like brown sewer rats, Arthur." "So how am I supposed to know if I see one?" "Exactly," said Ella. "That's the thing about brown rats. They all look the same. Just ask my dad." "Yeah, but there's a difference between being goosed by your dad and having your throat ripped out by an angry mom," said Arthur. "Why don't you just assume that every brown rat you see here, other than me, is a member of the rat mayhem?" "Good idea," agreed Arthur. "I wonder if any of them are vegan." "If I were you, I'd assume they're not," said Ella. "And I wouldn't try to engage them in conversation about meatless recipes either." "Right," whispered Arthur. "If I see a brown rat other than you, I run first and discuss menus second." "I think I'd use that as a general rule if I were you," smirked Ella. Arthur saw no brown rats other than Ella, so made a run for the nearest building. It was a small shed with a little porch situated next to a pond. He saw a hole in the bottom of the door and scurried through, Ella right behind him. At the back of the shed was a large double door. It looked heavy, but moved easily as Arthur and Ella pushed against it. It swung open to reveal that the shed was, in fact, a lean-to attached to a large 2-story barn. They both gawped at the huge expanse before them. "It's perfect," whispered Arthur. "A roll in the hay, and the sawdust, and the cobwebs." It seemed like forever before Arthur and Ella heard the rumble of a vehicle approaching. They had been investigating the barn. The hide-and-seek game had been brilliant fun back at the museum cellar, but it took on a whole new dimension when you had a huge area in which to play. There were nooks and crannies, old farm machinery and tools, boxes of memorabilia, old LP records, metal signs, musical instruments, newspapers, pinball machines, bicycles. There were holes in the walls which lead to new areas full of more wonderful things. By the time they heard human voices outside, they were exhausted and covered in sawdust and old cobwebs, and not in the least bit worried about it. "I didn't think it was possible," panted Ella, "but that was more fun than last time." Bales of hay, stacked high against the wall, made it possible for the two little rats to scamper to the upper floor, where they settled in to watch the world's most discreet couriers earn their money. When you get what you pay for. It was like watching two artists at work, and when they were finished, Arthur was happy that he had received his money's worth, even though he was unsure how much money it had cost. It didn't matter because his new friends were safe. He waited until he heard the delivery van drive away, and then spoke. "They've gone," he said. "You can come on now." "The princess and the stone." "Up here," shouted Arthur from the hayloft, and everyone looked up to see him and Ella waving. "Welcome to your new home." "It's Bonza, mate," said Tane as he fluttered up and sat on a bale of hay. "Subarashi," said Yosuke, with his customary bow. "It means wonderful." "It's better than that horrid old cellar," said Percy, who flew to join Tane. "Muy comoda," said Harriet as she wriggled down to the hay beneath her. "Very comfortable. I could be very happy here." "It is a barn, yes?" asked Princess Kirana. "Yes," answered Arthur as he and Ella scampered to join Tane and Percy on the hay bale. "But to whom does it belong? Are we safe here?" "Perfectly safe, Princess," said Ella. "Arthur's bought it." "So it is our home." "It sure is," said Arthur. "The only person for miles around is the little old lady in the farmhouse, and she never comes out." "Poor her," said Harriet. "I think it's by choice," said Arthur. "She's had high fences put up all around the perimeter, and gets her provisions delivered by the same couriers we use. That's how we found out about it." "But," queried Percy, "if the old girl wants to be left alone, how come she sold the barn to you?" Sergei told them he had a customer who needed somewhere secure and secluded, so they suggested this place. They approached Mrs. Stone and told her it was only going to be used to store old museum exhibits. "So she was not deceived, because that is what we are," said Princess Kirana happily. "Exactly," said Arthur. "There is only one problem, though." "I don't like the sound of this," said Tane. "To sweeten the deal, I told Sergei to tell her that the buyer was royalty. A princess." Arthur looked at Princess Kirana and smiled slightly. "Unfortunately, she wants to meet her." "Oh, no," she said. "Why is everyone looking at me?" "'Cause you're the only princess here, your major," sniggered Tane. "Easy peasy. Gentle breezy." It was dusk when Princess Kirana finally opened the barn door and peered out. "Are you absolutely certain I have to do this, Arthur?" she said, estimating the distance to the farmhouse door to be 8 fully grown orangutans holding hands. "How am I supposed to pass as a human being? Even in this light, will be obvious I am not." "Trust me, Princess," assured Arthur. "I would never put you in danger. Just speak with her through the door." She edged out into the dull evening light and gasped as she felt the wind on her face for the first time in as long as she could remember. "What's wrong, Princess?" asked Ella. "Are you all right?" "I am fine, little Ella," she said. "A beautiful breeze touched my face, and it took my breath away. Oh, how I have missed you, my old friend." She breathed in deeply and stepped out into the darkness, a royal meet and greet, with only one flaw. Said Tine. "Has anyone else noticed the flaw in Arthur's plan?" "What do you mean, Tane?" asked Ella, who paused, then thought, and then spoke. "Oh, dear." "What's up?" asked Percy, who considered, then mulled, and then groaned. "Oh, do you think we should stop Princess Denka?" "Why?" said Arthur. "What's up?" "She knocks on the door. The old woman shouts through the door. Simple." "Think about what you just said, Arthur," said Harriet. "What?" quizzed Arthur. "What's the problem?" "Apparently she hasn't been out in years. They even leave the deliveries on the doorstep for her. She'll be fine. They just have a little chat, and then—" "Oh, that's right, Lightning," said Tane sarcastically. "Humans can't understand us." We got to go and stop her, said Ella. Nah, said Arthur. She'll assume she's speaking a different language. Everybody moved to the barn doors and looked out just as Princess Kirana's knuckle reached the door. The farmhouse. The princess and the watering can. Boom, 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 it rapped loudly. Who is it? Barked the door's owner. It is I, Mrs. Stone. Princess Kirana. Oh, you're here, are you? Are you a proper princess? Back at the barn, everyone looked at each other with puzzlement. I assure you, on my honor, that I am, madam. I am Princess Kirana of Artemis, daughter of Clono, king of Kiripan. We arrived earlier today. It is so nice of you to allow us to use the barn. It's not free, you know. How come she understands her? Asked Percy. I know, Mrs. Stone. My friend Arthur has agreed details with you, I believe. I suppose you'd better come in, said Mrs. Stone, and the door flung open. Oh, no, said Ella. I thought you said she never opens the door. Princess Kirana froze with fear as she saw an old gray-haired lady before her. Slowly she raised a giant hand and waved it in front of her face. There was no change in expression. Are you still there? Yes. Sorry, my friend. You really are too kind, my dear. Why are you being so nice to me? Snapped Edith. Why, because you have been so kind to my friends and I, and, well, you seem so nice. Nice, said the old woman with a start. Well, I can be nice, she softened. I have no doubt. Tell me, is there anything I can do for you before I leave? I am so sorry, but I do not know your first name. It's Edith, said the old woman gently. Edith. What a beautiful name. Would you mind if I call you Edith? She paused, unaccustomed to polite conversation. I would like that. Excellent, said Princess Kirana happily. Well, Edith, can I help you in any way? Yeah. She stammered, clearly perplexed by the generosity of her new neighbor. It would be nice, she continued, if you could water my plants. I find it quite hard to lift the watering can these days. They are my babies and my only company. You must think me mad, but I talk to them all the time. It would be my absolute pleasure to feed your friends. I think it is beautiful that you speak with them. I used to speak with my forest all the time. They understand and give so much back. Lead the way. Princess Kirana followed Edith into the farmhouse, and the door closed behind them. As Edith made her way slowly to the kitchen, she spoke. You own a forest? She quizzed, as she took the watering can from beneath the sink and began to fill it. Own? Oh, goodness, no. One does not own the forest, said Princess Kirana. The forest owns us. Without it, we die. I don't know what I would do without my plants, said Edith, but it is getting so hard to water them all. In that case, my new friend, I shall make it my task to water them for you each day, if, of course, that is agreeable. Princess Kirana lifted the watering can from the sink with ease. Oh, my dear, that would be so wonderful. It gets so lonely living on your own, you know? Imagine, she said with a gulp, a princess watering my plants for me. No one should be alone, said Princess Kirana. And from now on, we will all make sure you are well looked after. All? Quizzed Edith. Yes, answered Princess Kirana, me and my entourage. Oh, yes. Of course you'd have an entourage, agreed Edith. Are you all staying in the barn? We would like to, Edith, she said. Unless that is a problem, I am sure we could arrange to go elsewhere. No, snapped Edith, but this time with excitement. I think I would like you to stay. Ah, so that is decided then, my new friend, she said softly. Now please tell me all about yourself while I feed these beautiful friends of yours. The barn, Tortoise Ears 1, Owl Ears 0. I'm confused, said Taney. Why has she let her into the house? They looked like they were having a chat, said Percy. I wonder why Mrs. Stone can understand the princess, but the receptionist at the museum didn't know what Arthur was saying, pondered Ella. I don't know, said Arthur as he peered through a gap in the door. Can you see her yet? No, mate, said Tane from his vantage point on a windowsill. What can she be doing? Wondered Ella. I hope she's okay. Should I go out and try to find her? Offered Percy. I think it's best if we stay here at the moment, said Arthur. We don't know this place yet, and I don't want to lose another one of you. Do you think Honorable Princess Kirana Denka is lost? Asked Yosuke. No, I'm sure she's fine, said Arthur, in an attempt to convince himself as much as the others. How long has she been gone? Asked Percy. About an hour, said Arthur. You shouldn't have sent her, snorted Ella. It wasn't safe. What if something has happened to her? What could happen, said Arthur. She walked 10 yards to introduce herself to a blind little old lady. What could happen? She could be in trouble, old boy, said Percy. Hang on. What did you say? He said blind, grinned Tane. Oh, you sneaky little rat. Did you know she was blind all the time? Asked Ella. I may have, smiled Arthur, with a cocky shake of his head. She's coming back, said Harriet, as eagerly as a tortoise can. How can you tell? Asked Tane. I can hear her. Well, I can't, and I'm an owl, said Tane. Owls have great hearing, and if a huge orangutan were on her way back, I think I'd know. Princess Kirana's head appeared from behind the barn door. Oh. Hello, your Major, said a slightly startled Tane. Geesh, Harriet, you got good ears for someone with no ears. Just because I have no oracle does not mean I have poor hearing, she said with a slow nod. She turned to look at Princess Kirana. Are you all right, my dear? I am more than all right, thank you, Harriet. What's an oracle, Perk? Whispered Tane, and Percy shrugged. The oracle is the visible portion of the ear, said Harriet. What happened over there? Asked Ella. You were gone for ages. I made a new friend, said Princess Kirana. And Arthur? Yes, Princess. It would have been much easier if you had told me that Mrs. Stone is blind. It wouldn't have been as much fun, though, would it? Sniggered Arthur. No, I suppose not, smiled Princess Kirana. I do wonder how it is that she understood me, though. Soon he'll be legless. As everyone settled down for the night, Arthur pushed the open button on his aluminium case and the lid raised slowly. You in there, Cyril? He asked. Nearly all present and correct, Arthur, said Cyril as he climbed onto the side of the case. Nearly? Quizzed Arthur. Yes. I lost another good leg. Must have been sitting funny and it went dead. It just dropped off when I got up. Cyril wiggled his pedipalps in the air. I smell blue bottle. Big fellow, too. Excuse me, old boy. I got work to do. Cyril and his 4 remaining good legs scurried into the night with real purpose. You haven't managed to turn Cyril into a vegan, then? Said Ella. You can't win every battle, eh? Said Arthur with a shrug. The pond. 1, 2, tree, and go. He loved it when his leaves rustled at different times. It felt like a gyroscope and knocked him slightly off balance. Not off balance in a scary, oh, I'm going to fall over kind of a way, but rather in a new, all my branches and roots are jiggling about and feels nice kind of a way. He looked across at her and hoped she hadn't seen him enjoying his leaves. He figured he always pulled a funny face when this happened, and didn't want to seem uncool while she was watching. If she was watching, he really fancied her, all big and brown and barky, but with the greenest leaves he'd ever seen. Leaves that rippled and swayed so delicately and gently that it was all he could do to not simply stare at parts of her all day. But that would have been weird. He wished he had the confidence to communicate with her, but he was just too shy. They were the only 2 trees on this side of the pond, and just imagine if she hated him. They'd be stuck there alone forever, so it was better to remain aloof. Besides, he wasn't even certain that she had noticed, or for that matter, could notice him. Perhaps he was the only tree in the world who had thoughts like these. He often let his thoughts carry him away. Sometimes he wondered if his seed and her seed had made a huge effort to make it to this side of the pond, just so they could be alone together. But how would a seed do that? Perhaps by huddling together to make themselves look big and irresistible to a passing bird, and when they were gobbled up, they hurried through the bird's digestive tract, so they were ready to be deposited in this particular and strangely treeless spot. Perhaps he was the only tree who had these kinds of thoughts, and he would be alone forever, next to the tree he loved. He was just about to bend slightly in the breeze when he heard voices. He remembered happier times when the children would come and climb on him and then dive into the pond. Happy, giggling children. That had been so long ago. He had watched them from afar as they grew up and became less interested in whimsical things like diving into ponds and more interested in human stuff. Metal boxes which pumped out smoke that made him cough, shouting at their parents, crying as their parents shouted at each other. All he had wanted to do was to reach out one of his branches and say, "Come and play again, like you used to. All of you. Be happier. Giggle again. Laugh again." But it was too late. The farm and all of its joy was long gone, and now dreary day followed dreary day. He listened carefully as the voices got louder. They seemed different somehow, innocent. Not the innocence of youth, but the innocence of goodness. "Okay, before we push open the door," said one of them, "I want you all to put your hands, flippers, and wings over your eyes." That's an odd sentence, Ella, thought the tree. Except for Harriet, perhaps you could retract into your shell. The tree was intrigued and watched as the double doors to the shed appeared to magically open. Then he noticed 2 little rats at the bottom of each door, pushing as hard as they could. "Okay," said one of the rats. "You can look now. Will someone please be as excited as I am?" "It's got everything," said Arthur excitedly. "A pond for Yosuke, grassland for Harriet, a rocky cliff face for Tane, and trees for you and Percy." He turned to Princess Kirana to see if she was happy, but she had already set off around the water's edge, where she had noticed a handsome male tree and a very attractive female tree who appeared to be ignoring each other. "What about you guys?" said Arthur to Percy and Tane, but they were already flying to the top of the rocky cliff opposite. Yosuke dragged himself to the pond and stared in silence at the water before him. "Yosuke," pleaded Arthur, "you must be happy, surely." "Kawaii," he said with his head bowed somberly. "Does nobody like it?" said Arthur in exasperation. "Arthur, look," said Ella, and she placed a hand on his shoulder and nodded in the direction of Harriet, who was slowly turning in the long grass. After the third turn, she lay down and rested her head on her front legs. "Thank you, Arthur," she whispered, with a long, satisfied sigh. "Gracias. Up diddly up, down diddly down." "Watch this," yelled Percy from the top of the cliff. "On 3, Tane," he shouted. 1, 2, 3. Percy and Tane fell forward off the cliff edge and plummeted towards the floor. Seconds later, they whisked back up and flew as hard as they could, while all the time yelping and howling with laughter. "I've missed this," Tane shouted as Percy flew by his side. "Tally-ho," hollered Percy. "This feels great." Ella held Arthur's hand as they watched the 2 birds swoop and rise and dive and soar and play and giggle. "You're a good rat, you are, Arthur," she said, and she squoze a little harder. "Watch this," shouted Percy as he flew up high, banked left, and then nose-dived into a tailspin towards the pond. Even Tane, for a moment, thought it impossible for such a tiny bird to pull out of the dive, but Percy's timing was exquisite as he performed a perfect arc, causing the water to part slightly before powering back upwards. Up and up he went, joined eventually by Tana, who flew into him. They grappled and wrestled and laughed in mid-air. They tumbled as they played, and to a non-flyer, it must have looked as though they had lost all control, but they gathered themselves skillfully and glided in formation to a perfect landing on the tree above Arthur and Ella. "That looked like a lot of fun," said Ella. It was," shrieked Tane excitedly. "I can't believe how good that felt," squealed Percy. "What a horrible situation." Yosuke continued to stare at the water. "What is it, Yosuke?" "Are you all right?" asked Harriet. "What is Kauai?" "Scary," he said. "I feel scared of the water." "Why?" she asked calmly. "My disability," he said. "What if I cannot swim?" Harriet stood up slowly and walked to Yosuke's side. "It's up to you," she whispered. "You will always be our brave warrior." "It's okay, big fella," said Tane from his branch. "No worries." "It's not important," said Ella. "But what is my reason if I cannot swim?" he asked. "To be our friend," said Harriet. "I know what will cheer him up," said Arthur. "How about some rat facts?" "Oh, no," groaned Ella. "Here we go." "Did you know," continued Arthur, undeterred, "that rats can jump up to 3 feet high from a flat surface and more than 4 feet horizontally? Most rats," he continued, "can swim quite well. They can climb walls and trees, walk along telephone lines, and can fall from a height of 50 feet without getting hurt." "Prove it," challenged Tane. "Which one?" said Arthur, keen to take up the challenge. "See if you can jump as high as Yosuke," said Ella, trying to involve the sea lion. "Okay," said Arthur, positioning himself in front of Yosuke. He lowered himself onto his haunches and sprang up. Yosuke gave a little smile as the antsy rat reached his eye level and then landed with ease. "I'll do the horizontal jump," said Ella excitedly. "See, you're interested now, aren't you?" grinned Arthur smugly. "See if you can jump over Harriet." "Un momento," said the giant tortoise. "I need to prepare myself." They watched as she appeared to do absolutely nothing for 30 seconds. "Okay," she said, I'm ready." Ella leaned back and then ran. As she reached Harriet's head, she leaped up and over and did a little forward roll when she landed. "Wow," she gasped. "I didn't know I could do that. What else did you say?" "Climb that tree," said Percy eagerly. Ella scurried up the tree with ease. "Watch me this time," she said as she ran back down in a corkscrew pattern. "The one I want to see is if I can drop Arthur from 50 feet without it hurting him," said Tane. And he grabbed Arthur's harness and swept him into the sky. "Tane!" shouted Ella. "Be careful!" "It'll be right, Ella," yelled Tane as he flew up. "I used to carry little rodents like this all the time." "Wah!" yelped Arthur as he soared into the sky. "This is great!" "Arthur," called out Ella, "are you sure your harness is strong enough to hold you?" "Don't worry, it's military-grade, non-breathable, neoprene." Tree meets tree. On the opposite side of the pond, Princess Kirana had reached the first of the 2 trees. She climbed halfway up, wrapped her arms around the trunk, and breathed in. "You are a handsome tree, my friend," she said. "But why do you ignore this beautiful woman by your side?" She then swung out on one hand, grabbed a branch on the female tree with the other, and hung between them. "Allow me to introduce you to each other," she said lovingly, as she watched a small fancy rat fall into a pond from about 50 feet. "Everything looks better underwater." "Don't panic," yelled Tane as he swooped around. "Remember, he said rats can swim." "Most!" screamed Arthur as he plunged towards the pond. "I said most rats can swim. This one cannot." There was a small distant splash and a tiny splash as Arthur entered the water in the center of the pond. "Arthur!" cried out Ella as she ran to the water's edge. "I'm coming." "No, little one," said a Japanese voice calmly. "Leave this to an expert." Yosuke struggled to the bank and then slithered into the water. Everyone held their breath as this brave animal faced his greatest fear. There was no need to worry. Just like Percy and Taney earlier, he swooped and glided through his natural habitat with nimble skill, harmoniously and instinctively, knowing his boundaries. He was, to the relief of his friends, at one with his environment. Arthur, however, was not. "Help!" he gulped, as he struggled to keep his head above water. Percy fearlessly dove into the water and flicked Arthur out so he could fill his little lungs with air before going under again. Up bobbed the little fancy rat one more time as his flailing arms instinctively brought him, gasping, to the surface. Tane saw an opportunity and swooped to grab Arthur, but he was clearly out of practice and only knocked him back under. "No," cursed Tane. "Sorry, buddy." All of a sudden, Arthur rose like a phoenix from the water, followed by the nose, head, body, and flippers of a sea lion. He spun Arthur into the air like a ball, and spray cascaded off his white and brown fur like a garden sprinkler. While Arthur was spinning in the air, Yosuke swooped around and caught the sodden rat safely on his back. He swam to the edge of the pond, and Arthur leapt off and plopped onto the grass, gasping for air. Everyone looked at him. "So just to be clear then," said Percy as he landed on Harriet's shell, "Arthur can't swim." Princess Kirana, who had made her way around to help, leaned forward and grabbed Yosuke's flippers. "Thank you, my princess," said the sea lion. "I am afraid that I will struggle to get out without your help." "You are so graceful," she said. "A magnificent warrior. I will always be here to help you, my friend." "Your harness," said Yosuke as he looked down at Arthur. "It is intact." "Is it?" gasped Arthur as he looked at Tane. "Well, I never," said Tane. "I guess I must have dropped you by accident. How clumsy of me." "Tomodaki's," said Yosuke with a bow. "What does that mean, Yosuke?" asked Harriet. "Friends," he translated as a grin formed across his face. "Thank you both." "Do you mean you two did that on purpose to get Yosuke to save you?" exclaimed Ella. "No," said the rat and owl in unison. "Yosuke," said Ella. "What's the Japanese word for idiot, please?" "Baka," said the sea lion. "In that case, Arthur and Tine," growled Ella, "you are a couple of bakas. I can't believe you did that. And look at you." "What?" said Arthur, shaking off the last droplets of water. "You look like a—" Ella paused. "Drowned rat?" completed Yosuke with a broad smile. The barn on 1900 hours at 60 minutes an hour equals 114,000 hours, doesn't it? That afternoon, a delivery arrived. While everyone was outside by the pond, the delivery gurus set it up as per instructions. It was the equipment Arthur had ordered from Sergei, and he simply could not wait to show it to his friends. He had asked that everyone reconvene in the barn at 1900 hours, only to be greeted with blank looks, which remained until he said he would come and tell them when it was 1900 hours. As Arthur prepared to flick the power switch, he heard from above the buzz of a blue bottle stop abruptly. "Got you," said a tiny voice. "Cyril," moaned Arthur. "Did you have to?" "One has to eat, old boy," said Cyril. Apparently he was something of a tease. "Well, the least you can do is share him with another spider," said Arthur. "Then he'd be a tease for two, eh?" "Oh, I say, old boy," spluttered Cyril with a full mouth. "You made me laugh so much that I spat out a little bit of blue bottle." "You, Cyril, that's disgusting," said Arthur, as he marveled at the beauty of his new state-of-the-art laptop, linked to a 65 curved 4K OLED smart TV with fully immersive surround sound. He looked at the clock. It was only 4. Plenty of time to do some planning. The farmhouse, woodlice wobbling, whacking. Boom, 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 went Princess Kirana's fist on the old wooden door. "What the—" said the little woodlouse, who had been minding his own business and happily chomping on a bit of rotten door. He waited a moment and then bit down on a new section. Boom, boom, boom! It rapped again, and he fell to the floor and landed on his back. As he lay there flailing in an effort to right himself, he questioned his life choices. Was Dorwood worth it, he thought to himself. It was risky due to the exposed nature of the task, but it was also delicious, all soggy and easy to chew. He looked up and saw a huge leathery hand heading his way. "I am so sorry," said whatever was attached to the hand. "You are the second creature I have had to turn over recently." A delicate finger flipped him over, and he scurried away. As he ran, he looked over his first lateral plate and saw the largest happy face he had ever seen looking down at him. He paused for a moment and wiggled an antenna by way of thanks. Never had he felt less threatened. He sat on his Europod and watched as the huge hairy red thing with leathery bits turned back to the delicious door and leaned into it. "Edith!" it shouted. This time the sound waves were too much, and the woodlouse vibrated slightly, left into a small puddle of water. He instinctively rolled into a ball and held his breath. As he peered from a small gap between lateral plates 6 and 7, he saw the huge hairy red thing with leathery bits and a very happy face turn and walk away. The barn, the beta test. Arthur was setting the resolution of his 2 screens when Princess Kirana hurriedly entered the barn. "It is Edith," she said breathlessly. "I think something is wrong. I need your help." "Okay," said Arthur, secretly quite excited. He leaned into his new Qualitat Deus microphone, pushed the live button, and spoke. "Emergency! Will you all please make your way to the barn? We have an emergency." Dust particles, which had laid unmoved for decades, suddenly shot into the air and fluttered around manically as the powerful surround sound speakers, located around the room for optimum performance, shook the barn to its core. Rotten old frames clung onto their window panes with all their might as they fought to grip the glass they had dedicated their lives to protect. Somewhere at the back of the room, an old, out-of-tune guitar resonated a weird, never-before-heard chord, while high above in the hayloft a spider with only 4 good legs bounced along his web and fell into a rival spider's lair. This didn't end as badly as you would think due to the spider's union, which protects the rights of any spider who should find himself in the web of a rival. The release fee of 1 leg was easy for Cyril because there was nowhere in the terms and conditions that stated the leg had to be a worker. Ella ran in first and skidded to a halt near Princess Kirana's feet. "What's up?" she said as Percy and Tane flew in through one of the hayloft windows. "It's Mrs. Stone," said Arthur. "Princess Kirana thinks something may have happened to her." "Is everything okay?" asked Harriet, who appeared at the door with Yosuke. "Edith did not answer her door," said an agitated Princess Kirana. "She asked me to visit at the exact same time as yesterday, but she did not answer. I fear the worst." The farmhouse, wheelie fast. "Let's go," said Harriet, as she sped slowly out of the barn, followed by Princess Kirana. "You two go," said Arthur. "We'll catch up. I have something for Yosuke." He jumped down from his laptop and ran to a large cardboard box. "Help me open this, please," he said to Ella, and the 2 rats ripped at the cardboard to reveal a 2-wheeled device with straps. "What is it, mate?" asked Tane. "I think I know," said Percy. "It's for Yosuke, isn't it?" "Bang on, Perk," said Arthur, as he and Ella wheeled the contraption to Yosuke's rear flippers. "Right. If you 2 lift him up, we'll push it under." "You had to let the ape go, didn't you?" said Tane sarcastically. "She could have lifted him in a flash." "Stop complaining, Tane, and grab some flipper," said Percy. "The princess is worried about Mrs. Stone. We can do it." "I will lean forward," said Yosuke. desperate to help. Percy and Tane grabbed Yosuke's flippers with their talons and flapped as hard as they could. "Geesh," strained Tane. "I thought Arthur was chunky. Wait until I tell everyone I lifted a sea lion." "What, everyone?" heaved Percy. 3/5 of everyone you know are right here, and the other 2/5 can still hear you complaining. Just lift." Puff Cyril as well," flapped Tane as Arthur and Ella pushed the wheeled platform under Yosuke. "And a marvelous job you are doing too, Tane," shouted Cyril from the hayloft. "Good show, old bean." "Right, boys," said Ella. "You can put him down." The two birds gently lowered Yosuke's flippers onto the platform, and the two rats ran over and under him to secure the straps. "What do you think, Yosuke?" asked Arthur. "Arthur designed it himself," glowed Ella. "It is fantastic," he beamed as he sped off to catch up with Harriet and Princess Kirana. "Thank you again, Arthur-san." "Wow, look at him go," said Percy happily. "Where'd the hernia just to see his face," joked Tane. "Come on, let's go and save a pensioner." "Can doors duck?" "Break the door down," shouted Tane excitedly. "You three are strong enough." "Perhaps it would be prudent to simply knock again," suggested Yosuke, as he flippered and squeaked up to Princess Kirana and Harriet. "Oh, Yosuke," exclaimed Princess Kirana when she saw his new appendage, "your new wheels are splendid. Look, Harriet, our warrior is now as mobile on land as he is in the water." "Beautiful," said Harriet. "I am so pleased. I think Yosuke may be right. Edith could have simply not heard the door." "I shall try again," said Princess Kirana, "but I did knock heavily." Her hand raised to the door as somewhere nearby a small woodlouse braced himself. "Boom! Boom! Boom!" They waited a moment, but there was still no answer. "Perhaps we should break down the door," said Harriet. "You, me, and Yosuke could try." The three of them pushed as hard as they could against the door. "It's not budging," said Harriet. "We need to find another way in." "If you two guys check for open windows," shouted Arthur to Percy and Tane, "me and Ella will check for holes." "Will do," said Percy eagerly. "Come on, Tane." The two birds circumnavigated the house and flew back to Arthur. "Most of the curtains are closed, Arthur, but there's a small upstairs window that's half open," said Tane. "Could I fit through?" asked Arthur. "Just, but I'd have to drop you in, and it's a long way to fall if I miss." "Don't miss then," said Arthur. "Besides, rats can fall for 50 feet without hurting themselves, apparently." "I'll go and grab the window," said Percy. "I may be able to open it some more." Tane picked Arthur up by the harness, and Percy flew to the window and hung from it. He began to flap furiously, and it opened a little bit more. "Nice one, Perce," said Tane. He looked down at Arthur, dangling underneath him. "Trust me, mate. I know what I'm doing." He aimed and dove at the window, and just as it seemed he would smash into it, he pulled up and released his cargo. Arthur slid down the inside of the angled window and plopped into the bathroom sink. "Bombs away!" he heard Tane shout as he flew back to the others at the front door. Arthur jumped to the floor and started the search for the old woman. I hear voices in my head. They all stood at the front door waiting to hear from Arthur when Ella spoke. "Okay," she said. "Got it." The others looked at each other as though Ella was losing her mind. "To whom are you speaking, little Ella?" asked Princess Kirana in the gentle way a nurse would ask an hallucinating patient. "Arthur," she said. "But Arthur is not here, my dear," pointed out Harriet. "No," said Ella, pointing at her tiny earpiece. "He's here in my head." "What's he saying?" asked Tane from behind her, as he waved a wing at his head in the time-honored, "She's mad mime." "He said he's found her. She's on the couch in the living room, and she isn't moving." "How are you hearing this?" asked Yosuke. "When we can hear nothing." "Oh," said Ella, finally realizing that they didn't know what a milliter regrade headset mic was. "It's something on my harness that Arthur rigged up. It's called a microphone, and it means we can keep in contact with each other from a distance." "Ah," nodded Yosuke, none the wiser. He said he's looked at the front door and it's got too many bolts, but the back door seems to just have a latch. He thinks the two of us could lift it if you guys pushed. She turned to Tene. Do you think you could drop me into the window like you did with Arthur? No worries, Sheila, said Tene. And he took off and swooped back down to grab her. Arthur said to ask you to make your way to the back door. Please, called out Ella as she disappeared around the farmhouse. A large red ape and a two-wheeled sea lion walked patiently behind a giant tortoise as they made their way through Edith's overgrown garden to the back door. When they arrived, Tan and Percy were already waiting on a window ledge. They're going to climb up the door and hang off the latch when you're ready to push, said Percy. Very well, said Princess Kirana as she placed the palms of her hands against the white wooden door. Please allow me to push, said Yosuke, and he placed his shoulder to the door. They heard the sound of claws on wood and then a click as the two rats raised the latch. Now! Shouted Ella. The door swung open, and Princess Kirana headed for the living room, followed, as speedily as her 4 chunky legs would take her, by Harriet. Entering without breaking. Edith? Edith? Said Princess Kirana as she gently shook the old woman. Is she okay? Asked Harriet when she finally entered the room. I do not know. Oh, I hope so. Princess Kirana sat on the couch by Edith's side and held the old woman's hand. Oh, how awful it would be to lose her now, she said. Harriet came over and rested her head on the orangutan's lap. Look, she whispered, and she gestured toward Edith, whose eyes flickered. She is alive, beamed Princess Kirana. Who is it? Who's there? Blasted the old woman with her previous vitriol. It is me, my friend, Princess Kirana. Oh, hello, Princess. She softened. What's happened? Is everything okay? I am so sorry, but we have entered your house uninvited. I knocked on your door, and you did not answer, so I became worried. My friends and I were so concerned about your welfare that we found a way in. I am so happy to find you safe and well. Oh, I must have overslept. I'll put the kettle on and make us all a cup of tea, said Edith, as though nothing had happened. Then I can meet your friends. She swung her legs off the couch, narrowly missing a giant tortoise, and made her way to the kitchen. Flap, flutter, brush, brush, squeak, flip, flop. 10 minutes later, Edith appeared at the living room door with a tray full of tea and biscuits. Who's for a cuppa, then? She said. Unfortunately, my entourage must go now, Edith, said Princess Kirana. But not before I introduce them all to you. Edith's head cocked as she heard what sounded like wings flapping. This handsome man is called Percy, she said, as he flapped past Edith's head and out the door. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Stone, he said. And this is the magnificent Tane. G'day, Mrs. S., he said as he fluttered on her other side, making her gray hair bristle slightly. Said Edith in a questioning tone. This is Arthur. Yo, said Arthur as he brushed past her left leg. And Ella. Hi, Edith. Nice to meet you, she said, brushing past her right leg. And my faithful warrior, Yosuke. Konnichiwa, Mrs. Edith Stone. He is bowing to you, whispered Kirana into Edith's ear. Oh, my, said Edith. And she returned the bow, straining her ears in an attempt to place the squeaky, flapping noise which sounded a lot like someone in flippers pushing a wheelbarrow. My friend Harriet and I will stay with you and keep you company if that is agreeable. Hola, Mrs. Stone, said Harriet. Oh, please call me Edith, she said as she mistook Harriet's shell for a coffee table and placed her cup of tea on it. Do you know, she continued, with the first smile Princess Kirana had seen on her face, I think we're all going to get on famously. The barn, the great after-party slump. Wow, that was great, said Arthur, turning to Tane. Wasn't that great? You were great. The way you dropped me into that window was, well, great, I can't stop saying great. Someone else, please say something that isn't the word great. It was fair dinkum, mate, said Tane. What does that mean, Tane? Asked Arthur. It means it was great, mate, sniggered Tane. Great, said Arthur. Arthur, calm down, said Ella. You're not telling me you didn't enjoy that, said Arthur, and he looked directly into Ella's eyes. It was great, she said giddily. When the door opened, and we were hanging off the back, it felt, great, suggested Arthur. But, gentlemen, said Percy sadly, I didn't do anything. Nor did I, said Yosuke. Rubbish, slammed Arthur. We were all there. We worked as a team, said Ella. A squad, said Tane. I couldn't have done it without you helping me, Perk. You held open the window. And you pushed the door, Yosuke, said Ella. We were like a finely tuned unit. A unit of extinct animals, said Yosuke. An extinction unit, said Ella. Or the X-unit, declared Arthur. Oh, yes, I do like that, old man, said Percy. Me too, said Tane. We could be the airborne division, swift and deadly, able to deliver a payload to the enemy and extract ourselves with skill and precision, reconnaissance a speciality. Nice, said Arthur. And Yosuke, you would be our Marine Corps, speed and stealth underwater, and able to impose a decisive attack on our enemies before they have recognized the threat. Yosuke bowed with pride. What about me? Asked Harriet, who had made her way back from tea, biscuits, and coffee table duty with Edith. Well, after your app idea back at the museum, I think you should be the X-Unit's base operations expert, trained in all areas of the high-tech dark arts, adept in web research, covert internet systems, and communication strategies. Ooh, that sounds more exciting, she droned sarcastically as she glanced at Yosuke and shrugged. Don't worry, said Arthur. It's easy. I'll train you up. Ah, buena, she responded, giggling kindly, because I didn't understand anything you just said. That leaves you, me, and Princess Kirana, said Ella. What have you got planned for us? We're the ground forces, the agents, the spies, the covert operators who use cunning and guile to outwit our foe, said Arthur. What do you think, everybody? Do you want to be the X-Unit? Yosuke put his flippers together and bowed. Percy and Tane took off and flew excitedly in close formation. Attack! Attack! Said Tane. Down with our enemies, yelled Percy. The X-Unit Airborne Division are go! Princess Kirana entered the barn and looked down at Harriet. And who exactly are our enemies, please? She asked quietly but firmly. We haven't quite decided that yet, answered Harriet softly. Anyone who hurts animals, blasted Arthur. Yeah, we can stop a lot of pain, agreed Tane. Arthur has shown me some of the awful things that humans do to animals, said Ella. We could at least try to help some of them, couldn't we? And what about anyone hurting our planet, suggested Yosuke. So all of humanity, then? Said Princess Kirana. They're the ones doing the damage, aren't they? Said Arthur, as he leaped onto a bale of hay and pretended to shoot at Percy. Are you going to tell them, or shall I? Whispered Harriet calmly. Let them tire themselves out first, she whispered back. They are young and have a lot of hatred and anger to use up. Shall we go outside, my dear? The princess and the tortoise slowly left for the quiet of the pond area, while the other members of the newly formed X-Unit played Kill the Humans. The after-party slump. I am so glad you two are finally speaking, said Princess Kirana as she hung between the two trees. You are so perfect for each other. She looked down and saw Harriet dozing in the long grass by the pond. Through the shed doors she could see the aftermath of her friends' excitement. They were exhausted. Yosuke was basking on the floor with a big smile on his face. Percy, his beak tucked into his wing, heaved on the sea lion's chest with each slumbering breath. Tane's head had sunk so deep into his body that there was no discernible difference between where his head ended and his body began. His ears twitched occasionally, as though not totally asleep, and still on an audio version of Looking for Prey. Ella lay curled up on a bale of hay next to Arthur, who was stretched out on his back, legs akimbo, with his tongue lolling out of his mouth and a puddle of drool forming by his head. His back foot seemed to want to scratch something, but only fresh air felt the relief of any imagined itch. "I could very easily learn to do all of that, you know," announced Harriet, without moving a muscle. "Do what, my dear?" said Princess Kirana. "The job Arthur gave me," she said. "The technical what's-it, with the dark art skills." "You are not seriously suggesting we should do it, are you?" "I don't mean the killing," said Harriet. "That's just bravado. But imagine if we saved just one animal. It would be worth it, mi amor." Princess Kirana knew Harriet didn't require an answer, so she swung between two lovers and thought about what her version of the X-Unit would be like. A comedy of errors meets slapstick and farce. Arthur woke with a start and kicked out his leg, booting Ella in the face. "Ow!" she yelled, as Arthur slurped up a small droplet of drool, and then shook the rest off, which in turn sent some splattering into Tane's head. "Oi!" said Tane, and Arthur leaped up, lost his balance, and fell off the bale of hay and onto Percy. "Watch out!" said Percy, as Arthur slid down Yosuke's belly and landed face-to-face with the sea lion. "Do you always wake up like that, Arthur-san?" asked Yosuke. "Or was that a particularly odd moment?" "It's not as rare an occurrence as you would think," said Ella, still rubbing her head. "Sorry," said Arthur. "I was having a bad dream." He leaped back up onto the bale of hay. "I dreamt that you all died." "Oh," said Tane. "Sweet dreams, eh?" "It was awful," said Arthur. "But it does raise a question." "What's that, old boy?" said Percy. "Can revived, formerly stuffed animals die?" he mused. "Again?" "I was thinking that earlier as I pondered your X-Unit idea," said Princess Kirana, who had come in when she saw that people were waking up. "How will we find out until it's too late?" asked Ella. "Well," said Arthur, "and it gives me no pleasure to say this to you all, but while I prepare a little presentation—" "That's better, then." "Why did that make you laugh, Tane?" questioned Percy. "I'm a laughing owl, mate. It's not up to me when I laugh." "Righto. Anybody got any ideas?" asked Percy. "You mean other than the obvious?" gulped Tane. "Yes. Seppuku," declared Yosuke. "Yeah, thanks, Yosuke." "Oh, yeah, sorry. I was just trying to encourage him." "I'm going to do it," said Percy. "Any moment. This time, here I go. Next time, I promise." "This could take a while, Your Maj," whispered Tane into Princess Kirana's ear. "I don't suppose you could give him a helping hand, could you?" As Percy flapped by on his fourth circuit, Princess Kirana reached her long, powerful arms into the air, grabbed him, and threw him against the window. There was a shatter of glass, followed by a thud on the other side. "Percy, mate!" shouted Tane. "Are you there?" "Oh, Percy. My poor dear Percy. Please forgive me," she pleaded. "I do not know what came over me." Percy appeared, with little splinters of glass in his feathers, and sat on the windowsill. "Como estás?" asked Harriet. "How are you?" "Marvelous, old girl," he said in disbelief as he flapped frantically in an attempt to clean himself. "Not a scratch on me." "Please allow me to help," said Princess Kirana as she began to carefully remove glass from it. "No," they all shouted. "Oh, Yosuke, we could have found another way," cried Princess Kirana. Yosuke's body fell to the floor, face down. "Is there any blood, Tane-san?" he said through the clenched jaws. "Huh?" said Tane. "Oh, I can't see any. Can you guys see any?" Harriet's neck extended to survey the area around Yosuke's body. "No blood, Yosuke. You're alive, she said. Or dead, corrected Tan. Or immortal, dared Percy. I could make my way to the roof and throw myself off if it would help, offered Harriet. It'd take you a week to get up there, guffawed Tan. That is a wonderful offer, Harriet, but I think Yosuke's demonstration is enough, said the Princess Kirana. Arthur, she shouted into the barn. Yes, Your Majesty, he called back. We all appear to be dead. That's excellent news, he replied. Now it's nearly 19 o'clock hours, so would you all mind coming in here, please? The barn on no rush. Everyone settled into their spot in the barn and stared, as per Arthur's instruction, at the big, black, shiny thing on the wall. I want to introduce you to someone, he said, and put a picture of a human with long hair and a beard on the screen in front of them. This is an online friend of mine called the Earth Dweller Feller. He's the reason I'm vegan. A wing raised and flapped for attention. Yes, Tane, said Arthur. I think I might be able to guess what your question is. What's a vegan, right? I was actually going to ask if I could pop to the toilet, but I just realized I'm sitting on a bale of hay, sir. His eyes squinted ever so slightly until... Okay, I'm done. You, Tane, said Percy as he hopped slightly to the right. I would like to know what a vegan is, please, Arthur, asked Princess Kirana. Vegan is the word humans have given to someone who will not eat animals or use any animal products. So me, then, said Harriet proudly. Yes, Harriet, said Arthur. You are, by your very nature, an herbivore. An herbivore? misheard Tane. What's one of them? An herbivore is an animal who eats no meat. Oh, well done, Harriet, said Percy. Go, girl, said Tane. What about the rest of us? Oh, no, exclaimed Princess Kirana. I used to eat insects. Does that make me a monster, Arthur? Me too, said Percy in horror. Mostly berries and seeds, but I was partial to an occasional insect or worm. You're not monsters, guys, comforted Arthur. A couple of insects and worms are fine because it's your survival instinct. You ate what you needed when you could get it. I'm a monster, said Tane. I used to eat geckos and beetles. I even had the occasional... Tane paused. Mouse. It's okay, Tane. I know what you used to eat, said Arthur. Me too, said Ella. That's why I hid behind Arthur when I first met you. We lost Cousin Sid to an owl strike last year. Sorry, Ella, said Tane glumly. It's not your fault, said Ella. Like Arthur says, it's instinct, innit? Besides, we didn't really like him. He used to nick food from the winter stores. Oh, well, I don't feel so bad now, said Tane with a smirk. Anyway, I'll bet the big guy ate more meat in a day than I did in my whole life. I bet he used to swim about with his gob wide open. I must confess that Honorable Little Tane is correct, said the sea lion. We are not known for compassion when it comes to seafood. I am sorry, everyone. No one has to apologize, said Arthur. Some animals eat meat to survive. That's a fact. I'd prefer it if it wasn't rat meat, but I do have a vested interest in that. The point is that humans don't just eat meat. They farm it. They cultivate it. And they slaughter animals in awful ways just to satisfy a false need. The truth is that humans are what is known as anatomically herbivorous. So they are like me, said Harriet. They don't need meat. Correct, said Arthur. And that's what I learned from Earth Dweller Feller. Humans are not designed to eat meat. They don't have sharp claws or large canine teeth that are capable of tearing flesh. They also have to cook meat to make it even slightly digestible. So why do they hurt animals when they kill them, said Percy. Because animals have become an industry, and they want as much as possible, as quickly as possible, to keep up with the demand. Do they not care? Asked Princess Kirana. Do they think animals can feel no pain? Some choose to believe that animals have been put on the planet for them to use, said Arthur. And anyone who tells you they think animals feel no pain is either a liar or stupid. But what can we do? Asked Harriet, shocked at what she was hearing. Anything, said Arthur. We have a limitless amount of human money and a team of unkillable superheroes. What can't we do? But we're just two little birds, a big ape, a slow tortoise, and a sea lion on wheels, said Tane. And two rats, demanded Ella. Oh, well, that pushes us from a useless bunch of stuffed animals to a useless bunch of stuffed animals, plus two rodents, said Tane. My tiny owl friend may be a little blunt, but he is right, said Yosuke. Do you really think we can make a difference, Arthur? Asked Percy. Watch the screen and tell me how you feel when the program is over, said Arthur as he pushed the play button. It's a video by Earth Dweller feller. Look away now for 280 words if you don't want to know. The screen flickered and a picture of a leopard appeared. A voice boomed through the surround sound cinema system. The Amur leopard, critically endangered. Numbers in the wild, 60. Poached for its beautiful fur. The picture changed. The gorilla, critically endangered. Poached for their bushmeat. The picture changed again. The hawksbill turtle. Numbers in the wild, unknown. The sola. Numbers in the wild, unknown. The pictures continued to change for each fact. The vaquita. Numbers in the wild, fewer than 60. Entangled and drowned by gillnets, set for other marine species such as totoaba, who itself has been declared endangered due to overfishing. The pangolin, the most trafficked mammal in the world. Its meat is considered a delicacy and its scales are used for medicines. The black, Javan, and Sumatran rhino, all critically endangered, poached for their horns. The Sumatran tiger, 400, 500 in the wild. The South China tiger, extinct in the wild. Both hunted for the skin and bones. The Bornean and Sumatran orangutan. Habitat destroyed for logging and palm oil plantations. In 1985, 58% of the island of Artemis was covered in natural forest. By 2009, that had shrunk to 29%. It took humans 24 years to destroy 50% of the island's natural forest. That is a destruction rate of 71,000 football fields a day. 300 in 1 hour. That equates to 50 orangutans every week being killed. At this rate, the orangutans remaining in the wild will be extinct in approximately 7 years. This video was taken recently on Artemis. It shows a male orangutan trying to fight a large digger, which is ripping his home from the ground. "Panji!" yelled Princess Kirana. "What does Panji mean?" asked Harriet. "It is the name of my brother, the Prince of Kuripan. He is alive," she said. "You mean," said Ting. "That's him?" "Yes. He looks so sad. Arthur, please stop the moving picture." Arthur pressed pause, and the image hung on the wall. A beautiful animal trying to save its home against a human machine designed to destroy, as efficiently as possible, the forest that nature had grown over thousands of years. They all stared at the screen, transfixed with sadness. "Are you sure that's him?" said Arthur. "Arthur," she cried. "I know my brother." "Yes, sorry," said Arthur. "Of course you do." Princess Kirana rose from the floor and walked outside. They all watched as she climbed the male tree and swung out her arm to the female. There she hung. "This is awful," said Ella. "We have got to do something about this," said Percy. "We don't even know when this was, or if he's still alive," said Tane. "I have to find out, though," said Arthur. "Just look at her. How sad she is." "Arthur, mi amor," said Harriet. "I think we may have just found the X-Unit's first mission." "You're here." The mood had changed since Arthur had shown them Earth Dweller feller's video, and everyone was looking to Arthur to come up with a plan to help Princess Kirana's brother. Arthur and Ella sat on the end of a small jetty and dangled their legs over the side. "Are you staying, or do you have to get back?" said Arthur. "I should go back, really," said Ella. "Mum will be worried. Besides, I know you need time to think." "When will you be back?" asked Arthur. "I'm not sure," said Ella. "Will you stay in touch, please?" said Arthur. "Of course," said Ella. "Please wear your harness," begged Arthur. "Just tap the earpiece and I'll be there." "Okay," said Ella. She walked up to him and touched her nose to his and wiggled it. "I've never done that with anyone before." "Neither have I," said Arthur. "But to be honest, I didn't know it was a thing." "Oh, get lost," she giggled. "Walk me to the grid? After a nose wiggle like that, just try and stop me." "Is Artemis an island or a Simornilap?" Arthur watched the little blip caused by Ella's GPS on the big screen while everyone else dozed. When he saw it stop in free rider territory, he relaxed and began to think about planning a mission. It wasn't going to be simple. He had to get a collection of dead friends and two live rats, one of whom he loved, halfway across the world safely. Not only that, but once there, he had to have a plan to find a member of a royal family who no one knew was even alive, and then stop the industrial destruction of the fauna and flora of an entire island, and then the region. But that wasn't enough. He wanted to stop humans completely on their path to destroying the only planet they had. His right eye twitched slightly as he realized he may have overloaded his brain with plans to take over the world. "One step at a time," he muttered to himself as he ran to his case and fired up the smartphone. He decided the place to start was to research the island of Artemis, but figured he needed some help. It was time to reveal what was in the large crate which had sat unnoticed by everyone in the corner of the barn. Pay attention. Everybody. Everyone sat quietly and looked at the little fancy rat and on top of a crate they hadn't even known was there until a moment ago. "How very intriguing, old boy," said Percy eagerly. "What's inside it?" "It's something I had Sergei put together for me," said Arthur. "Is it a big rat wheel?" teased Tane. "No," answered Arthur. "It would have to be a very big rat wheel," said Percy reflectively. "Ooh, ooh," continued Tane excitedly. "Is it a tortoise wheel?" "A tortoise wheel?" exclaimed Arthur. "Yeah, so Harriet can charge your battery thingies," concluded Tane. "Oh, I don't like the sound of that, Arthur," said Harriet mournfully. "You should not be asking our Honorable Harriet Chung to do such work," Arthur said. "Yeah," said Tang, shaking his head with disappointment. "Not cool, mate." "What?" said Arthur, unsure how this conversation had descended into him being accused of using an old dead tortoise to charge his lithium power packs. "It's not a tortoise wheel, or a rat wheel, or any wheel for that matter." Arthur ran to the edge of the crate and touched a panel labeled "Click Here." It revealed a large red button. "Yosuke, if you would kindly come over here, place your nose against this button, and then move away," said Arthur as he hopped over onto a nearby bale of hay. "Oh, no," said Tane with pretend shock. "It's a giant nose cleaner for a sea lion." Yosuke flippered and wheeled over to the crate and pressed his nose to the button. As he backed away, he heard a loud hissing sound as the lid of the crate raised up and flipped over to expose a solar panel and satellite dish. The four sides then fell hydraulically to the floor to reveal the contents. The group gasped in awe. "Let me introduce you to the Mobile Command Center," said Arthur. "Oh, what is one of those, Arthur?" asked Percy in astonishment. "It is a fully portable communications hub built into a custom-made desk, housing a state-of-the-art computer with 2 high-definition displays, multi-track recording facilities, and its own satellite link. It can run entirely off the grid and can be powered by solar panels, wind power, water power, rechargeable lithium batteries, and, if absolutely necessary, general electricity." "Ah," said Percy, not quite understanding. "How wonderful." "Does it have a wheel?" said Tane. No, but I'm thinking of getting one fitted that is just big enough for a laughing owl, said Arthur sarcastically. What does it do? Asked Harriet. It will be the link between agents in the field and our command headquarters here at the farmhouse, said Arthur. And it will be manned by Yosuke. Oh, how exciting, said Harriet. You honor me with your confidence, Arthur said. But that's not all, said Arthur as he leaped down to a smaller crate located just below the desk and clicked another Click Here panel. Another red button revealed itself. This is for Harriet. He gestured that she should do as Yosuke did earlier, and she moved slowly forward and pushed the button. The box opened to reveal a mini version of Yosuke's setup. Command headquarters, said Arthur. You will remain here at the barn and be our eyes and ears to the world. You will be our researcher and online presence. But how can I operate a tiny thing like that with my big feet? Asked Harriet. Easy, said Arthur. Do you remember the text-to-speech app we used at the museum? Oh, yes, remembered Harriet. When you typed something and a voice said it for you? That's it. Well, I have installed that for you, as well as the reverse application. So you can speak, and it will type what you say. But will it understand me? Asked Harriet. Do you remember that Brenda couldn't hear us? I've tested it, and it works fine, said Arthur. But if any of that does fail you, I have ordered you a fully interactive keystroke inputting device. That sounds very technical, said Harriet. It's actually a huge keyboard with a stick, but fully interactive keystroke inputting devices sounds much better. So if that thingy is for Harriet and the big one is for Yosuke, what do the rest of us get? Asked Tam. I'm glad you asked me that, my laughing friend, said Arthur. Now, has anyone ever seen a James Bond movie? They all shook their heads. No, I don't suppose you have, he said under his breath. Never mind. It makes what I'm about to do a little bit pointless, but I'm going to do it anyway because I want to. Firstly, I wonder if I could trouble the princess to move the black case on the desk down to the floor, please. Of course, Arthur, said Princess Kirana. Now gather around, everybody, because I need to talk you through your equipment. Equipment, said Percy. Pay attention, will you, X-Unit, said Arthur in his best Q voice. I want you to take great care with these devices, as there are one or two rather special accessories. Communication devices, he continued, as he held up tiny earbuds, like the ones Ella and I use, but bespoke, designed for each of you. Simply tap on it and say the name or names of the operative you wish to speak with, and you will automatically contact them. If you are the one being contacted, the earpiece will buzz and vibrate. Tap once to hear the caller's name and again to answer. He handed them out. Try them on for size and practice with them. They may well save your skin. He jumped into the case and dragged out a large neoprene harness. This is your harness, Your Highness, he said with a giggle. It's like mine, but bigger and with more clips, so you can carry things and keep your hands free. What sort of things might I carry, Arthur? Asked Princess Kirana. Oh, you know, provisions, equipment, perhaps a rat or two, said Arthur. There's also one each for Percy and Tane, so they can carry the cameras. Cameras, said Tane. What cameras? Please don't interrupt, X-Unit. Arthur smiled. Now, you asked about cameras? These are predominantly for our Air Reconnaissance Division, but can be adapted for underwater and ground operations. They are military-grade spec and broadcast quality. Also, we may need to record things from all angles, so they are linked to visual displays on your headsets, so you can point them at anything you might want us to see. Such as? Asked Percy. I have no idea, but it's better to have too much equipment rather than not enough, eh? Said Arthur proudly. Now, if there are no more questions, you'll have to excuse me. I have to teach a large tortoise and a sea lion on wheels how to become web-savvy technical analysts. The farmyard, that was easier than he thought it was going to be. An hour later, and much to Arthur's amazement, He was relaxing by the pond, watching his comrades play with their new toys. Hyosuke was recording Percy's camera as Tane pulled funny faces into it, and Princess Kirana was giving everybody a step-by-step guide via her headset on how to move gracefully whilst wearing a harness. He had left Harriet to find out as much as possible about Artemis while he'd been booking flights and finding somewhere remote for them to use as a field base. He tapped his earpiece and said Ella's name. There was a crackle, and then he heard her. "All right, Arthur," she said. "Hi, what are you doing?" he asked. "Nothing much. Just having some food with Mom and Dad," she said. "You probably don't want to know what we're having, but it had bones. What's going on there?" "Lots. I showed them the gear I bought. It's amazing how quickly they've all learned to use it." "Have you told your Mom and Dad that you're leaving yet?" "Not yet," said Ella. "When are you planning to go?" "The flights are for tomorrow," said Arthur. "Tomorrow?" yelped Ella. "That's quick." "I know," said Arthur. "But we need to get started as soon as possible. I don't want people to think about it for too long, or they might have second thoughts." "I need to sort some things," said Ella. "Okay, but I need you here for sunrise. We have to be ready for packing and transporting. I've listed the cargo as museum exhibits and electrical devices, so we should be fine in my aluminium case." "Ella?" Arthur paused for a moment. "Are you still there?" He waited again. "Huh. She must have gone to pack. That moment when you're waiting for a text, but get a notification." Arthur sat on the end of the jetty and stared at the undergrowth which concealed the entrance to the grid. He drummed the fingers of his left hand on the damp, rotting wood and tapped his earpiece. "Ella," he said, "are you there?" He looked at his display again, but there was still no blip. "Where is she?" he mumbled. "Still no sign of her, old boy?" said Percy, as he fluttered down and settled beside his little rat friend. "Nope," said Arthur without looking around. "I hope she's okay. I don't know what I'd do if anything happened to her." "I'm sure she's fine," said Percy. "Perhaps she's just switched it off for some privacy." "Yeah, you could be right," said Arthur. "But I specifically asked her to leave it on when we are apart. She can have all the privacy she wants while we're together." "That's a bit full on, mate," said an Antipodean drawl from behind him. Arthur turned to see Tom standing behind him. "Where do you come from?" he stuttered. "I didn't hear you." "I walked, mate," said Tane. "Just 'cause we got wings doesn't mean we fly everywhere. Look, mate, you can't keep track of her all the time. That's just weird. You got to give her some space." "But I thought she wanted to come on the mission," said Arthur. "She's part of the team." Arthur's display blipped. He grabbed it excitedly and stared at the screen. "Oh," he said disappointedly. "Is it Ella?" asked Percy. "No, it's a notification to tell me the courier will be with us in 1 hour. Hey," he continued excitedly, "that gives me time to go and find her." "Mate," said Tane, "I'm sure she'll contact you when she wants to." "Arthur, Percy, Tane," shouted Harriet from inside the barn. "I just had a notification that the couriers are on their way. You need to come inside and get ready for the trip." "How is she getting my notifications?" said Arthur with bemusement. "Talk about a fast learner, eh?" "She's right, mate," said Tane. "Come on, old chap," said Percy. "We'll all walk together. I'm sure Ella will contact you soon." They walked into the barn, and Tane and Percy jumped onto their perches, ready for the long journey. Hyosuke and Princess Kirana stood near the crate housing the mobile command center. "Any news?" whispered Princess Kirana in the direction of the two birds. Tane shook his head slowly. Arthur was just about to jump into his case when his smartwatch blipped again. This time it was Ella's device. He tapped his earpiece. "Ella, is that you?" "Well, I don't know how it works," came a voice in the distance. "Stop staring at me like that. It's a complicated bit of kit, this." "Hello," yelled Arthur. "Can you hear me?" I know," said the distant voice impatiently. "I can hear it, too." "What button?" Oh, I've had enough of this. You have a go. I'm going for a forage with Charlie. Hello? Said the voice of Mrs. Brown. Can anybody hear me? Yes, I'm Mrs. Brown, said Arthur eagerly. This is Arthur. Is everything okay? Where's Ella? Oh, she's gone, love, said Mrs. Brown. Gone? Said Arthur. Where? I don't know, love. She took off the harness thing, placed it on the table, and left. She said she had to think things through. When was that? Said Arthur. How long has she been gone? Oh, that was last night, said Mrs. Brown. When she got back from seeing you. Did you two have an argument? No, said Arthur. At least I don't think so. I don't really know what an argument is. Did she say when she'd be back? No, love. We need to find her, said Arthur nervously. She could be in danger. Ha, 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 chuckled Mrs. Brown. Not likely. The only person in danger would be whoever tried to put her in danger. Don't you worry yourself about Ella. She can take care of herself. But what about the mission? Asked Arthur. Mission? She didn't mention any mission. Look, she could be gone for a while. The last time she went missing, she was gone for 3 days. I'll get her to call you when she's back. But that's no good, said Arthur. We'll be gone by then. Arthur, interjected Harriet, would you mind if I had a word with Mrs. Brown? Stumbled Arthur. I suppose not. I'll patch you in. No need, said Harriet. I've already done it. Arthur turned to look at Tane and Percy, who both shrugged. I mean, how does she do that? He gasped. I didn't show her. Hold on, Mrs. Brown, said Harriet. This is Arthur and Ella's friend, Harriet. It's very nice to meet you. Ah, you're the Spanish lady, said Mrs. Brown. Hola, Senor Harriet. Ella has told me all about you. A giant tortoise. How exciting. Yes, it really is, said Harriet. Sometimes things happen so fast I can barely keep up. I was wondering if little Arthur would be happier if we promised him to stay in touch with each other while he's away. That way I can keep him up to date with things. As women, we both know that occasionally we need a little space and some time away from our loved ones, don't we? You're quite right, Harriet, said Mrs. Brown. You know, it's almost like you've met my husband. I'm sure everything is okay with Ella. Tell Arthur to go on his little holiday, and we'll keep in touch with each other. I'll let you know the moment she gets back. Gracias, Mrs. Brown. I'm sure Arthur trusts you completely and will be very happy with that solution, said Harriet as she looked at Arthur and gave a little nod. Okay, said Arthur with the tone of a naughty schoolboy. And what do you say to Miss Brown? Said Harriet. Thank you, Miss Brown, said Arthur. Ella is very lucky to have a mom as loving as you. Adios, Miss Brown, said Harriet. I will contact you later, so please keep the harness close. Will do, Harriet. It was lovely to meet you. Adios. The comms crackled and went dead. There, said Harriet, all sorted. Now you can get ready for the couriers, can't you? Arthur turned and looked at Tane. What just happened? He said. I think you just got double-mothered, answered Tane. And here are your travel details. Hyosuke and Percy will be in crate number 1. Princess Kirana and Tane in crate 2. These will be labeled as museum artifacts. Crate 3 will house the mobile command center and the secure aluminium case, and will be labeled as electronic devices. This should eliminate any need for customs officers to investigate the cargo, but if they do, all they will find are museum artifacts and electronic devices. Once the flight is landed at Artemis International Airport, the crates will be loaded onto a wagon and driven to the large, secure compound deep in the jungle interior. This building has been purchased outright and is undergoing modifications as we speak to further secure it from any intruders. By the time we are dropped off, the area should be protected by a high wire fence and an impenetrable state-of-the-art electronic security system. Our couriers will accompany the crates at all times and ensure that we are delivered safely and set up to my instructions, said Harriet, while Arthur listened in complete dismay. Have I missed anything, Arthur Carino? He paused, agog. How did you do all of that? Simple, said Harriet. And let me tell you what a lovely young man Sergei is. He's so funny, too. You've spoken with Sergei? Said Arthur. Of course, said Harriet. How else would I manage to organize the security at the compound in Artemis? But I've never actually spoken with Sergei, said Arthur grumpily. Well, said Harriet, perhaps that is because you are a grumpy pantalones. Well, seeing as Harriet has everything in order and has a lovely relationship with Sergei, I'm going to make a suggestion, said Arthur, resigned to the fact that the giant tortoise had taken to her new job as technical analyst, like she'd been hanging around for 100 years simply waiting for the technology to be invented. I think, from now on, we should all do what Harriet tells us to do. All those in favor do whatever it is you do when taking a snap vote. Arthur saw one flipper, an owl wing, and a pigeon foot rise into the air. Princess Kirana stretched her neck upwards and gave a loud but delicate "Grumph!" Assuming Princess Kirana just voted yes and hasn't stepped on a rusty nail, I'd say that's unanimous, said Arthur, raising his own arm. Here's to our technical analyst and new mission coordinator, Harriet. Everyone stared at Harriet. Well, I don't know what to say, said the giant tortoise. I'm very honored, and I hope I don't let you all down. You'll be right, said Tame. What next, boss? Well, the couriers will be here soon, so into your crates, everyone, said Harriet. Once you're safely at the compound in Artemis, we will conduct a full systems check, and I will designate your first missions. Vale? Yosuke barked while Tane and Percy jumped to face each other and saluted. I think our Harriet is going to be very good at her new role, Arthur, whispered Princess Kirana. Was this always your plan, you clever little boy? Of course, mumbled Arthur, lying through his teeth. I'll see you all in Artemis.